There's literally no other way for me to start today's talk series than with this photo. The way that I felt affirmed, the way that I gasped out loud watching the entire Super Bowl halftime show by Kendrick Lamar, all I can say is it made me so proud to be an Angelino, to be a black man. And, for a long time, people have said, there's no agency in this generation. What happened to our fire? Well, let me introduce you to Kendrick Lamar. It's interesting that we're talking about Kendrick, and today we're talking about public leaders, public servants, and what we go through. I got the chance last week to go to a reparations panel with my mentor, and I asked her a simple question. I said, "What is getting ready to happen with the King tapes?" And she said, "Golden, I want you to pick up a book that I read last year, and I want you to see for yourself." And so for the past 4 days, I have been reading King, A Life by Jonathan Igg. Now, this is a 700-page book. This book has kept me up till 4 a.m. almost every day this week, and I just finished it last night. When we talk about Dr. King, what I realize is that there's a cost to leadership. Dr. King endured immense emotional and physical strain throughout his entire life, especially when he became a public servant. I remember some of the key things that struck me were he was in and out of psychiatric hospitals. And I started thinking, we don't ever talk about Dr. King in these terms. We don't talk about King and his mental health. We talk about him winning the Nobel Prize. We talk about him giving these incredible speeches, but he was in and out of the hospital. This was known within his circle, within his family, within his organization. Harry Belafonte met him one night and was so concerned because he noticed that he had a nervous tick that was audible coming out of his body. And he said, "Dr. King, do you notice that you have a tick coming out of your body?" There was a deep anxiety, a deep exhaustion that he lived in, and he felt this immense responsibility to us. He felt like he needed to be the one to make sure that his community was okay, to the point where he ran himself down. This man didn't want to go on vacation. This man felt guilty about being in spaces where people might think that he wasn't working for the people at every moment in his life. I think that the world saw his speeches, but not the speechless nights, not the sleepless nights, not the personal struggles. And what do we lose in the process of leadership? How important is it that we protect ourselves from losing too much while we're trying to make change in this world? Today is just as important for me as I think it's going to be for people who watch live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or people who watch this later throughout the weeks as we go. What a blessing to be doing this on February 13th. And this week, there's a song that I listen to quite a bit that lifts me every morning. And it's kind of old school. I'm a millennial, so I love me some Sounds of Blackness. But there is something about what Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis did with Optimistic that really keeps me going. I think in particular, there's a part of the song when in the midst of sorrow, you can't see up when looking down. A brighter day tomorrow will bring. You can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. That is how we're tempering this conversation today. keeping our heads to the sky. How do we do that as professionals in public health? How do we do that when we're leading? How do we do that so that we don't burn ourselves out like Dr. King did? And we love Dr. King and we're grateful for him, but we need to be okay. That's what we're talking about today. And I'm so excited to have one of my newest friends and who somebody I think is an incredible light in this world. And her name is Dr. Nicole Vick. Dr. Vick is a public health advocate, an educator, a civic leader, an author. She spent 20 years working to improve health in underserved communities. She's the former chair of the Los Angeles City Health Commission. She spent 15 plus years teaching, bringing social justice lenses to public health. And she's the author of some incredible texts, pushing through, finding the light in every lesson. She also hosts the Nicole D Vick Live podcast, which if you're on LinkedIn, please go and check out this podcast. It's an incredible inspiration. I am so excited to have her here today to have this discussion. This isn't just about Dr. King. It's not just about Kendrick Lamar, and it's definitely not just about me, but I'm really excited to learn from her as we bring her in. So I'll be right back. See you in a second. All right, let's bring in Dr. Vick. Dr. Nicole Vick,
And I
how
got
are
scared for a second. I'm
you?
I'm
Oh,
fine.
it's
I
so
got
great
scared
to
because I was
see
like,
you.
wait.
Listen,
So good to
we're
see
all
you.
trying to figure this technology out. Those of you who've been watching for several weeks, you already know how it is. We are in the beginning phase of this journey. And so we want you to pray for our technology and pray for Spectrum so that it does the right thing today. Welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation for you. I have so many questions and so many things that I'm pondering and wondering, and I need your expertise. And
Okay.
there are people all over public health, over the Black community as leaders, people that follow both of us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and I've been getting so many questions and so many thoughts about this moment today. It is resonating. I was on a meeting with somebody earlier this morning and I said, I'm going to be talking to Nicole Vick later today. And this is somebody at a high level in state public policy and healthcare. And there's so much happening. And so I'm really excited to have you. Now, the first thing that I want to know, who are you?
Ooh, I'm so many things. I think, first of all, I'm a mom. My daughter is almost 28 years old, which is wild because I'm like, how are you 28 and I'm 30? Like, I don't get it, right? Because I'm not aging. You are, sis. So, first and foremost, I'm a mother. I am a believer strongly in social justice and equity. I am a resident of the Crenshaw district, so I'm over here in Nipsey Hustle
Hey,
land, proud of it. And I stand on the shoulders of some ancestors, and a couple of them are right above me, and there's some photos above my head. And I really just am really immersed and aware of what they sacrificed to get me to where I am. I am so many, many things. And I don't want to take up the whole, time talking about that, but I just really believe firmly in giving and lifting people up as we climb and not leaving folks behind, not gatekeeping. So I'm just one of them people that, however I can be of service, I will be that to you. So, and I'm just really excited to see you. And when you brought up that Sounds of Blackness song, let me tell you something. That song brings me to tears. It don't matter how old that song is. If I hear it, I'm
every time.
crying. Period.
Every time. It's it's from the soul. And I watched a interview with Terry Lewis recently, and he said of all the songs I've ever done, they did all of Janet's music. They've done Yolanda Adams. They've worked with people going back to Prince's days. And
Mm.
um, he said of every song that we have ever made, if they put a time capsule together of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, he was like, that is the song that most represents who we are. I think it's one of our cultural anthems. I
Okay.
think for millennials, Optimistic is one of our Negro national anthems. But I'm just gonna leave that there. Now, there's a hidden cost of leadership in public health. And when we talk about public health, these are not just the people that people see when they go to the hospital. There are people who are on the front lines of policy, of lawmaking, of making sure that environmental health is taken care of. In my case, we're in behavioral health care and the workforce and improving the workforce. But there's a hidden cost to leaders in this field. We experience constant stress and burnout. We realized that when we woke up and there was a international pandemic, and it changed everyone's life period, but
Right.
particularly those of us who made decisions in healthcare. It really weighed on us. But then I start to think, and we talked about this before, what does it mean then to already be stressed by this position, but then you put on this skin? And in your case, you put on that body. You're a Black woman in this space, knowing that there are already difficulties, there's heightened expectations, there's scrutiny that comes with just being in these bodies and in this skin. And so I wonder from your perspective, what are some of the big public health struggles that what are some of the big struggles that leaders in public health in general face that most people wouldn't know or they wouldn't see?
First of all, I think the biggest problem is that people don't know what public health is. When public health works well, it is behind the scenes, nobody sees it. The only time they see us is when something is wrong. And so I think in some ways we have an image problem, sort of
Mm,
people don't like, what is this? And then we're forced to kind of show up when the thing goes bad, when the COVID happens or the bird flu happens, right? So we're hidden until we're not. So that's the one thing I think that just across the board we all deal with. And then I think for me, my perspective is that a lot of us, especially Black women, go into public health because we want to help. We want to make a difference. We want to fix some of the ills that we see in our communities. And so we come into this system, right? And public health is not just your local health department, it is a system. There's federal, state, local, nonprofit across the board. We come in passionate because, oh my gosh, we're going to fix it. We're going to do these things. But then we're met with some of the same barriers that our sisters in the corporate world see. But for us, it
mm,
feels worse because we feel like we're supposed to be in an institution that's focused on social justice and equity, but it doesn't play out that way in the workspace. Hold on, how come I got as much education and background as this person over here, but they got promoted? Hold on, why is my pay different? And so when I did my dissertation, which is on the psychological safety of Black local health department
come on,
employees,
dissertation.
one of the biggest things that came up was the disconnect. Wait a minute. Our organization is supposed to be about health equity and social justice. But
Wow.
first of all, I don't see that the work matching that. And I don't see myself as a workforce member actually benefiting from what we are saying that we're about. And I think that is what the
Oh
problem
my
is.
gosh. When I tell you, like when the ripples just go like this, I am having almost an out of body experience because what I'm taking from what you're saying is imagine what it feels like to dedicate your career to making sure that people are healthy in their workspaces and being in that discipline. You have a doctorate in this. And then to go to work in that space and work is not making you healthy. It's, I mean, what does it feel like to be trying to help and lift up and then in the same spaces? That's kind of Dr. King of you in a way. That's one of the things that I learned from reading the book was Dr. King was saying, I am literally putting my life on the line for the freedom of our people. And even within the SCLC in my own organization, people are fighting against me.
Yes, yes. I interviewed 10 people across the country. So even with the stuff that I'm telling you is not even just my own lived experience. This is people that were telling me in their research, like, I'm trying to explain something to my colleagues about why we're working on a specific initiative. Here's the data, here's the thing. And then the response is, well, why are we only focusing on Black people? And then they're like, but I just explained to you why
Why?
we're only or I saw one of the participants said stuff like, literally, when we talk about equity and inclusion, people's eyes are rolling like,
Yes.
and it's like, so but the mission of the organization is equity, so why
It's
why is this a problem, right?
it's strange. It's strange. And right now, especially, I don't think America really understands that the policies that are being enacted in Washington, we're having to actually meet today. I'm speaking at a conference for an entire week in 2 weeks. And it's a conference that is on the fundamentals of prevention, healthcare, and diversity. We have had to go back and actually change the content of our speeches, our presentations. And it's not because of the organization, it's not because of the state, it's because it's a federal mandate. And what we were trying to actually communicate, it's like this is an example of what we're talking about. Our stories aren't considered important. The data that is around on indigenous people, women, people with disabilities, other people from marginalized communities, the LGBTQ community, these are not valued. They're not seen as important. Well, so that is strange to me. But I think one of the other things that you're talking about is this idea of what does it mean to sacrifice for the discipline that we've chosen. We've chosen healthcare, and we recognize as Black people in healthcare leadership that it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that we're doing. I wonder for you, when you think about being a Black woman in leadership in general, how are you? How has your well being been impacted? And I know you
I
could
would,
probably talk about that for the next 16 hours straight.
and it's interesting. I would say for the most part. So I've been in this working world for about 20 years, and I'm actually, to be perfectly candid, on my way out. I said, okay, 25 is about it for me. Mm-mm. I would say for the most part, I have been fine. And the reason I say that is because I have had the benefit of having mentors. And I think that's really important. So when we start talking about what can people do that can make their lives a little easier, I have had the support of mentors along the way, Black women, one of them a physician, one of them an epidemiologist, who always had the right here. Hey, Nicole, you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. Sit tight, keep your head down, mind your business, and drink your water. Okay.
Mm,
Right. And so there were people along the way always giving me nuggets of information. And I will also go back and backtrack. They have not always been Black women. There are always been other women of other races. And even my dissertation supports that too, that there have been mentors or supervisors or managers of other races that have been very helpful. But there was always someone that kind of gave me a little nugget. And that has kept me going. There have been points where things were very difficult, where I felt that my work and my labor was not appreciated. where it was like, wait, I'm actually doing the thing. So then when the job came up, that was that thing. And I'm like, well, why can't I get a chance to compete for that job? I wasn't even allowed. And I won't go into detail, but those types of little indiscretions and little, and I won't even say little because that hurt. That really hurt me bad. Those little kind of nudges and pinches and stabs, those things really chip at you. And it is really important to find ways outside of work to build yourself up so that you don't feel completely at a loss. Have you ever heard of people that maybe are stockbrokers and then when the stock market goes down, they're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I have no life. And then they do things. So that's why for us, specifically Black folk, we got to figure out what our support system is, what our goals are, what our dreams are outside of work. And for me, it's things like I'm about to write
Wow.
this thing, I'm about to tell this
Oh, and we're
story.
we're talking about that for sure. I'm not letting you go before you talk about that. And speaking of what you're talking about, we got a question from LinkedIn,
Okay.
and this is from Brother Malcolm. You know that now. I can't even get into Malcolm X. I'll get canceled. You know that's my hero. But Malcolm Clay said, "What are your thoughts about conversations surrounding cultural custodianship versus gatekeeping and health outcomes during these tumultuous times?"
Ooh, that's a good question. So earlier when I said gate, I don't believe in gatekeeping. I, let's be clear. I'm talking about, for me, other young Black professionals like Malcolm. Hey, Malcolm. Hey, I need some help. I'm not gatekeeping with you on that. I'm going to tell you everything I know. But I understand what he's talking about, where there is like, hey, there's some parts of our culture that are very important, and we need to kind of, hey, maybe everybody doesn't need to understand or know what we're talking about. So I hear the nuance, and thank you for bringing that up. But when I speak of I don't believe in gatekeeping, I'm talking about us. Like, if you really want to understand
Mm,
about how to apply for a thing, I'm gonna tell you all the things. I'm gonna tell you everything I know because I feel like what point is it of me to keep this information inside if I can help somebody else get where they need to be, I'm going to do that. So that's, I think, the nuance that I'm
that just spoke
speaking.
to me. And Mahalia Jackson used to sing a song, "If I can just help somebody," and it's my jam. It's a song I think about all the time. Then my journey will not have been in vain. And
Right.
that's what I love. I love us because that is the spirit that I have seen in the workplace. I have seen it not just with Black people, but people from other marginalized communities who say, I want to lift up people behind me. I don't want to just come in here and boost my resume and attain all this power and accrue all of this. I actually want to pour into other people. And
Right.
we, as servant leaders, which is what we do at Golden Global, we train people to be servant leaders, to serve their teams, to serve their communities. When you do that, you maximize your impact instead of just trying to
Absolutely.
become the king of this or the queen of this and not the Beyonce way.
And then the
It's
other
interesting.
part, real quick, I'll say too, is like, because I always tell when I used to teach, I'm like, I'm going to retire. I'm not going to be here. You're going to have to take over. So why would I gatekeep when at the end of the day, you're going to be the ones that are going to have to take control and make this thing work? Right. So
Yes.
why would I hold that back from anybody?
And that's another kingism that you have. Dr. King was very serious about the people who followed after him. We don't talk about how he mentored Julian Bond. And this is the thing, like a lot of the people that came up underneath Dr. King, they didn't they we didn't talk about how he inspired them. You know, the Ralph Abernathy's and Jesse Jackson and people that we've known and that are beloved in our community. But I think that you're right. We have to make sure that there are people who come after us that can lift us up. Now, somebody that I love to death, who I just think is an incredible role model in the entertainment industry and really in social service in general, is Miss Ava DuVernay. Um, Ava said that being the first or the only in leadership comes with unspoken burdens. There's extra scrutiny, extra expectations, but no extra support. And so, do you agree with that? Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. There is actually a couple of women that came in out of my program at USC prior to me. So I just graduated last year. They graduated some years ago. They actually did a life
Congratulations.
cycle. Yay. I know. I'm like, oh, Lord, I'm glad that's over. They actually created a life cycle or sort of a cycle of a Black woman leader. Sort of, you come in there, everybody's excited. Oh, yes, we're so happy to have you here. And then when you start pushing, well, why are we doing this way? Why don't we do it this way? Everybody's like, we don't know. She pushing too hard. And then next thing you know, you're sort of ostracized. So you go from pet to threat. And then you're out of there. And so I agree. It's a lot because a lot of times for Black women, and I know I'm not the only one that agrees with this, you're often put in charge when stuff is haywire, the thing about to burn down, please save us. And so there's this immense pressure to do well, and you cannot make a mistake. So that is a psychological safety concept. You are not allowed to make a mistake.
Mm,
And then when you do, you're out of there. We saw that with the former president of Harvard. We saw that with
yes.
the woman that unfortunately took her, had to that took her life, and she was harassed in academia. So it's like you get put into these roles, but it's almost like you're set up to fail.
Wow. And there's a cost that comes with having to be perfect, of having to have an unblemished career. Can you imagine what the vice president, our former vice president, Kamala Harris, I mean, to have spent your entire life basically having an almost unblemished political career, which you never see, and to still be gaslit and called unacceptable, to be called a DEI hire. Like that is the pain that I think we carry in these spaces. And then what I've personally experienced is I have in other places, I've had coworkers who have said to me literally in my face, you need to stop being so good. It's making the rest of us look bad.
One of the things I'll say, going back to former Vice President Harris, um, I will say how it impacted me when I heard people, whether it was other political folks or even the folks on the street, they go and ask, "What do you think about her?" And oh, I think she's not smart. And I said, so if you think she's not smart, then I can only imagine what people think about me because I have a doctorate degree. I'm pretty smart. So if they think she's not smart, I'm like, well, they must think I'm just like, so you know what I mean?
Right.
It gave me that sentiment that then, dang, so what do you think about me
What do you
then?
think about me? What do you think about me? And I think that's part of why we've had to learn, don't worry about what they think about you. What you think about yourself is the most important thing. Pouring into each other, pouring into ourselves. A lot of the work that I do, and I know that I hope that most professionals are doing work on themselves. That's how we become better leaders in general. But a lot of the work that I do is how can I love myself more? How can I validate myself more and stop looking for an amen or a thank you or some sort of validation externally? Oh,
Agree.
okay. So I love that. Now, this is another one of my heroes, and this is somebody who don't play games. Now, Michelle Obama, I chose her because she in Becoming talked about, and I should have put the book up here, but if y'all haven't read Becoming, read Becoming. It's you need to become.
Yes.
But Michelle Obama really highlights for me the myth of the strong black woman, and some would say the strong black leader. Um, there's this expectation that we always are strong, that we never show weakness. And it feels in some of these spaces, and particularly in public health, that there's a reward for overworking, or there's a well, this is, you guys are supposed to have these high levels of caseloads. You guys are supposed to be burning it at both ends. That's good. That's a good leader when you go home and you're typing reports all night. And I wonder, I wonder what are some ways that, well, first of all, have you ever felt the pressure to be strong at all costs?
Yes, for sure. I mean, you talked about the pandemic. I think that was like, I can't even put words, put it into words, but it was so much pressure just in general. First of all, we're living through it. So it's just like, oh my, I'm trying to stay alive. But then you're working in that specific industry, and it's like a million times, everything is all over the place, but you have to be responsive. You have to be ready. So that pressure, yes, for sure, especially during that time frame, I think was like crazy. So yes, to answer your first question.
And that pressure, I think it really, we resonate with that because it's not just about, we have a pandemic. This is it can be a way of life when you're black, where you're expected to just be strong. And I think that the roots go back probably to slavery, and this idea of we need to just dedicate, run ourselves down, regardless of what our positions are. It really is a, it feels like an expectation sometimes. I'm not saying that I want to be mediocre, but I remember growing up, all of our people would say, you're going to have to work 10 times harder. And I used to think that that was, they were just saying that, like you would have all these sayings in church. And then I grew up and I was like, no, that was real.
Yeah. You
If
know,
we
the
want to be
interesting
at these positions,
The interesting thing about that, so there's two things I want to say. I feel like that's why there was this movement, and I don't know if how strong it still is, but for Black women specifically to put the cape down, right? The Black woman, Black girl magic, Black woman is a superhero to really put that down. That's why I feel like the nap ministry, right? Rest as
come on.
restoration kind of came into a thing. And the other thing I'm gonna say, going back to this dissertation, the other thing about overperforming, we thought we had to work twice as hard to be just as good, but we realized, hold on, it don't work that way. So my dissertation title is At the Table, On the Menu, and Under the Bus. And the reason why it's titled that is because I had a professor, she was actually on my dissertation committee. She said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And what that means is if Black folk are not at the table where these decisions are being made, then our communities are on the menu and up for being cut up, discarded, whatever, consumed, all of it, right? My thought after all my lived experience, my education, my work experience, this dissertation process, talking to these folks across the country, honey, you can be at the table. They'll let you sit at that table. Your community is still on the menu, and everybody is all finna get thrown up under that bus. It don't matter if you're there or not, that the ship is going to sail as it has been intended to this entire time. So why are you working at midnight to do a thing? Oh, let me get this reported. Oh, I got to show that I'm a hard worker. You still are going to end up where exactly where you're supposed to be according to the plans of how these systems are run. So you're doing all this work really for free.
Wow.
Why are you doing this to yourself?
No, and so then that would be the question. Some people will say, well, then why am I doing it at all? And I think that this is a question. Obviously, I'm obsessed with King now. I used to do this with Malcolm X where I would reference everything to Malcolm X, but now I feel like I'm the King expert because I just read 700 pages. His father was very much against him being a martyr for the black community for the civil rights struggle. And it makes sense. This is your dad. Like he knew, they knew he was going to die. It wasn't a secret. The people around him knew, Coretta knew, his father knew, they knew that he was going to be killed. Um, the question becomes, well, then why do we do it if we know that it's going to harm us?
I don't think we can help it. I honestly do. At least from my perspective, what else would I be doing if I wasn't fighting in my own way for what I believe to be right and true? Why am I here? So I think that is the
Mm,
core answer to your question, right? That's the core answer. If I wasn't doing this, what is my purpose? And again, going back even to my ancestors, I stand on their shoulders. My aunt was a commissioner for people with disabilities. My grandfather integrated the fire station at the Los Angeles International Airport. It was hazed. Like, so it's like all of these things that I do come from, I inherited it in some way. So to me, it's kind of like, if I'm not doing it, then why? What is my purpose?
what am I doing
So,
here at all?
and to your point, it's kind of like, but you're doing this, and it's going to give you high blood pressure,
Oh,
right? So now in 2024, 2025, it's I'm going to do it, but I'm going to hedge, protect myself in other ways so that I know I'm going into this kind of pushing, but I'm going to soothe myself outside of that to protect myself.
wow.
And
Okay,
I don't think people were aware of that back then.
when you were talking, the thing that came to my mind talking about ancestors is the first thing is we owe it to them. We owe it to them to continue towards this path to freedom. It
We
it
do.
it is a responsibility. And then the other thing is I thought about sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us, sing a song full of the hope that the presence has brought us.
Yep.
And there's a reason why Black people have sung this song for generations. It's to remind us that no matter how hard it gets, we can't stop progress. We
Right.
can't stop telling the truth because there are people who come after us. Dr. King didn't just help Black people. He was a Black Baptist minister from the South who smoked cigarettes and went to Morehouse. So he was Black.
Right.
But the ripple effect of what he did changed the world. When he won the Nobel Prize, he was getting calls from India, he was getting calls from Africa, he was getting calls from Asia to say, what you're doing with just you, just this one person, it's impacting the rest of the world. And I think that's why we have to keep pushing. Like
Absolutely.
now now that we have said, okay, we have a responsibility, then the question becomes, we know that it takes strength to be in these spaces as leaders. We know that we need some sort of resilience, some emotional resilience. The amount of emotional resilience books that I've read in the last 2 years, when I tell you I could probably teach a class on Hillman Talk right now
You
about
need to
that.
do it.
Um, but I wanted to ask you, what are ways that leaders can actually protect their mental and emotional health while still showing up for our communities? So we know that we're going to be in these spaces. We know that we have an obligation. It's going to be really rough. So what can we do?
There's a few things that I always suggest. So you do need to find your mentors. You need to find those folks that are in that workspace that understand. Some of them may even have some leverage and be able to move some things for you. But you got to have one or two people that have your back. And I know, especially for us, it's like we can't trust nobody. We don't know. Use your discernment. You're given it, use it.
That's
Okay.
it.
And you will know who you can talk to. You will find out who you can talk to and who you can't. Because oftentimes what ends up happening is you don't have to say anything. They listen. I remember one time something happened and one of my mentors called me. I was crying. She was like, let me tell you something. And she's very religious and she started talking, and I'm not even as religious, but I respect it, right? So I'm not telling her, I don't want to hear, I'm listening to her. I'm crying. She said, let me tell you something, how God worked. And I was, but she called me. I didn't call her and say, oh, I don't know what to do. She called me. Or every so often, one of my former mentors will text, you good? And I'm like, no, and we'll talk. we'll catch up and I won't talk to her again for 6 months. So you figure out who those people are and it will become apparent. That's
mentorship.
one thing. The second thing is get your outside committee together, your outside board of directors of Nicole D. Vick Incorporated. You find those
Oh, I'm
other
taking
people
notes. I'm
outside.
taking notes.
Okay. So who are your other friends that know Nicole? They don't necessarily have to know your job or care about your job, but they know you. And they're like, what is going on? How can we help you? I once had a group of my friends. This was maybe 10 years ago now. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with my career. I don't know. I don't know. They came over with chart paper and food and said, listen, what you said you want to do what? You want to be a health deputy? Okay, well, you should probably think about doing these things. I still have that paper. And they didn't have to do that. But they all came together and said, let's help, Nicole figure this out. And over the years, we've done it for our other friends. Maybe another friend had an issue. We came over her house with chart paper and we sat and helped her. So you got to have your inside
Some bottles of
committee.
wine.
Yes, your outside committee. Also, you need to find things to do that you love that fill your cup. For me, it's my nails. Okay. I'm gonna sit in here and I'm gonna do my nails.
I
I'm
follow
quiet.
you on Instagram, and you don't play about those nails. Like it's giving
Um,
Coco. People aren't gonna. Everybody's not gonna get this, but it's giving Coco from 1992. Like you are
yes.
not playing games. Shout out to SWV.
And
Oh
listen,
my gosh.
I have a million tabs in my head open, right? If my brain was a computer, it's a million things going on. Do, 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 do. In those few hours on the weekend, I am still, I am focused, I am quiet, I'm allowing myself to be creative. I'm patient with myself because I got 10 fingers. I'm not left-handed, so I got to figure out how I'm gonna do both hands, all of that. So that allows me that space to just be and to be
Yeah.
content and happy. I'm watching my true crime and I'm doing my nails. So you got to find that. And the other ways for me, writing. So,
Yes.
I
Me
broke
too.
my ankle. When the ankle got broken, they did me wrong. I said, well, let me publish this article about what's wrong with the healthcare system. So that's what I'm
Right.
gonna do, right?
No,
so
you're right. You're right. I think that you just said some really key things. I had to write them down. Having a good mentor. I have great mentors and they pour into me all the time. But what I loved is the board of directors. Having a
yes,
personal board of directors. Now, you know what's interesting is I was just reading an article. I don't know how true it is, but Beyonce's a millennial, so we try. That's our girl. With all of the stuff happening around Jay Z, one of the things that I heard was that she's really connected deeply with the people who know her outside of, you know, Lemonade Beyonce, Michelle Williams, who obviously is like a sister to her. And Michelle, gospel queen, everything has apparently really been pouring into her and lifting her up. And you think about that in terms of us because we need that too. And it
yes.
can't always be people who work in the cubicle next to you. And it's about staying rooted. I have incredible lights and friendships, and I have a dear friend of mine who every single morning sends me a morning prayer.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's something that is, some people would say, "Oh, okay, well, it's just whatever." It's meaningful to me. I have another friend who every single morning will text me, "Good morning, King." Like it's it's our communication to say, he's saying, "I know what you're going through, and I want to remind you of who you are and that
Yes.
we have your back." See, look at me. I'm about to get emotional on here, and I'm not. I'm supposed to be on my Gail King, but it's serious.
And one thing I'll say too, it is beautiful to have that group of friends that will help you. And like I said, they know you. They might not know what's happening or your job or the detail, but they know you. One thing I will also say, and this is something me with this broken ankle has taught me, you got to make sure you are that to other people. So if you feel like you have
Mm,
that and the people are sending you morning prayers and are texting you, and they're pouring into you. You make sure you are pouring back out to somebody else. Don't just take, so what is it called? What do I call it? Don't just be taking withdrawals from the friendship account. Make sure you're also depositing back into the friendship
It's,
account as well. And I think that's
it's
really
that
important.
reciprocation that Lauryn Hill
Yes,
was talking about in the most phenomenal album of all time, The
yes.
Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Malcolm had another question. How do you find good men? I think this is a great question because we hear all the time, get a mentor. Now you're demanding that we have a board of directors. How do we do that?
I think one of the things, funny thing, I found wonderful people on LinkedIn, which is crazy. Like, I'll share a quick story with you, and I wouldn't necessarily call him a mentor. I think right now he's literally family. When I broke my ankle, I had before I broke my ankle, I went to lunch with a wonderful guy named John. I don't know if he's watching or not, but we went to lunch, and he, hey, and you seem like a really cool person. So again, you being that light, and people see it. He said, "You seem like a really cool person. I just want to take you to lunch. I saw you were going to school, and I just want to, congratulate you." He bought me a gift. I broke my ankle. John felt real bad. John said, "Dang, John has taken me to probably 75% of my medical appointments." I had not
Wow.
known John until I met John on LinkedIn. So sometimes you have to be the light, the person, the thing, the spark, and then people will gravitate. Um, and then the reciprocation occurs. I said, "John, anything you ever need from me, once I get my ankle back, you listen." So
Love
outside of
that.
that, I think again it can be hard because I know Malcolm is in the public health space. And I know that for Black men in public health, it's weird because it's like y'all are unicorns. It's like two of y'all in the whole wherever you work, it's like two of y'all, and that's it, or one
One
of
in
y'all.
50 people in the United States in working in public health leadership is Black and male. I was shook when I saw that. I said, well, if there's 50 people at your job, you
You're
might be
the
the
only
only
one.
one.
Yes. So then is when you need to kind of move outside of your workspace to find those mentors. There's a group on LinkedIn, Black Men in Public Health, I believe. And there's a folks leading
Like
that
that.
effort. There may be some space there to find those mentors, in those connections. Cause I know, like you said, even in my workspace, I'm like, it's only two that I know of. I know there's probably more, and we all work in the same office. So the two Black men that I know we in the same space. So it can be
You know
hard.
what? I love that you're talking about LinkedIn because I think it's an undervalued resource for all groups of people, not just specifically, I think in the Black community among leaders and professionals. We need LinkedIn. I met you through LinkedIn, and now you're my homegirl for real. But I think about so many of the connections that I've made have not just been transactional. It's not just, hey, Golden, can you consult for us? And there is some of that. But a lot of what I've seen is I read your newsletter and I just think the work you're doing is dope. And whatever you need from me, whatever I can do for you, I'll back you up. And I'll see people all the time who are starting businesses or who move into new roles, and they'll say, I really need a speaker last minute. No problem, I got you. I'm not gonna, charge you. Like, I believe in you. Let's pay it forward.
Right.
And as we all rise, we will all rise together. Like we're that beginning Destiny's Child when they were singing at the mall for free. And now you have Beyonce. I can't even afford to go to the Cowboy Carter concert because everybody wants to go now all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Y'all didn't like Beyonce back in the day,
That's
but
probably
that's just my tribe. I want to talk about a couple things before we're done that you're
true.
doing. One is Triumph in the Trenches. Now, please tell us about this book and what you're doing.
So this is an anthology that I am part of. So I wasn't the brainchild of this publication, but I felt like this is so important. We were just talking about the struggles of Black folk in the workspaces and being leaders and feeling pressure, da 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 da. And so this was like, how do we help Black folk navigate work? And so it was me and 21 or so other authors that came together,
Wow.
doctors, folks working in the tech space. And so at the time it was Elizabeth Leva and I'm blanking on her name. I see her face.
That's
And
okay.
she
You can
was
put it in the chat
yeah, and
when
so we were
afterwards.
working together and we all were getting together and we put this together. And the funny thing is, as we were working on it, I was starting to talk about it on LinkedIn and I made the comment, this is like the green book, but for Black working people. And if you don't know what the green book is, back in the day, Black folk could not move about the country freely. You had to know which gas station was the right gas station, because if you didn't and you went to the wrong one, there would be you might lose your car, lose your life,
You might not leave that gas station.
and so the green book was like, hey, if you need somewhere to stay in this part of the country, this is where you go. My family, my great grandmother's beauty salon was in the green book. My great grandfather's gas
Wow.
station, he had a Shell station, was in the green book. So for me, I said, this is like the green book. This is helping you figure out how to move through the working world. My chapter, of course, was about public service professionals. There is
Of
this
course.
added burden, right? Like, of course, yeah, of course, right? Hey, we want to come in and be passionate and change the world, but we're operating in a system that is designed to maintain the status quo. How does that don't work? So how do you navigate and move through that in a way that doesn't kill you? Okay. And
Yes.
so, but there's so many other stories in here. People are talking about finding their voice. There was one where she said something like, y'all got me at the table, but I can't say nothing. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell y'all. So some of these things, regardless of industry, impact all of us. So this book is really helpful in that way of like getting sort of that bird's eye view of, or that behind the scenes look of, well, how can I make it? How can I make this work life work for me?
I love that. Now, is it out already, or do we still
It
have some
is.
time?
It's
Okay.
out. It was out. We released this book last year. It's actually the 1 year anniversary of the release of this book. So if you go to my website, you can purchase copies of this book from me. I can sign it, and send it out
Yeah.
to you. Okay.
And your website is
Yes,
NicoleDVick.com.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Y'all go and pick that book up and get in the trenches, and then triumph in the trenches.
Yes,
But
please.
now, so you have that, and then another exciting thing that you have launched, and it's all over LinkedIn, is your Nicole D. Vick live podcast, which is super dope. Tell us what inspired you, and what are you doing?
I had a friend. I have a friend. He's still my friend. I have a friend, Dr. Dante Morrison, and he was doing a podcast, and he was doing it like I was like, man, I feel like you on going live every day. It was crazy, but I was like, hey, I'm launching my first book, which is called Pushing Through, and I was like, I have stuff to say. Like I want to tell a story. I want to talk about the Black community from a social justice perspective, and so I just started doing this podcast. We've moved, I think at one point I was doing it twice a month, but now I'm doing it every Thursday evening. And I just pick up topics that I feel like are really relevant and important. This month, of course, is all about Black History Month. This month's theme or this year's theme is African Americans in labor. So I'm going to be talking about us and work and how that, so it's crazy how everything, I'm like, oh, but then this book it's the same thing. African Americans in labor is in this book. So I'm excited. We're going to rebrand really soon. We're going to have a new name, new theme song, and everything, and that's going to be awesome. I'm excited for that. That'll be coming soon. But every Thursday evening, I'm talking. Sometimes it's just me because, baby, I can entertain myself, or I'll have a guest on. It don't matter. You're gonna come. You're going to come away being educated and learn something really important about our community, and just hopefully you come out as a better person by learning something from the podcast or the video podcast. This video. Yeah.
I'm so grateful for you. I think you've poured into me today. I learn every time I talk to somebody on Goldenlite Talks, and I'm really taking away this idea that we need to take care of ourselves more. You know, that we know why we're doing this work, we know who we owe it to, that it's critical to the health of our people and to really the health of every American and conversely everyone around the world, and that these systems are built to be hard for us. And so what can we do? We can resist through rest. We can build a board of directors for ourselves. We can find strong mentors. We can read your books. We can listen to your podcasts. We can find groups on LinkedIn and in different places that will really lift us up. And I think that a lot of times, those of us in these spaces, we don't get a thank you. And I really want to thank you. You know, if nobody has ever told you, you are a light for those of us. When we see your nails, when we see your pictures on LinkedIn, on Instagram, you inspire us. You are the wildest dreams of our ancestors. And I know that they are looking down on us and they are saying, well done. Y'all keep it going. I know you're tired, but we need you around. So I'm a fan, I'm a friend, and I'm grateful for who you are and how you show up. And I'm so grateful you made it onto Goldenlite Talks. We talked about this last year, and I was like, I got to have you on once I get this stuff launched. So I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. And I agree. I feel like you're a friend. We have to get together and have lunch or something. We got to do something. And thank
Yeah,
you for having this platform, because I think it's very much needed. So yeah, I'm grateful for you as well. And thank you for having me.
we're giving you a virtual hand clap and we're saying goodbye. Thank you so much, Nicole. Dr. Nicole Vick. Listen, let me tell you guys something. Now that she's gone, I had to write that stuff down because there was some stuff I need to do. I'm about to go get my board of directors together immediately. And on a serious note, I think we need to remember that when we think about our leaders, whether it's Dr. King or Dr. Nicole Vick or Dr. James B. Golden or whoever else we are, that we remember that these are real people and they're not robots. And we go through a lot. We go through a lot, but it's for a reason. So I want us to take that away, to know that we can't lead others if we have depleted ourselves. We need to lead ourselves. And rest is resistance. I'm getting ready to rest soon. And I hope that, not in that way, like not an eternal rest, but I'm going to, get some rest at some point. But final thoughts: leadership requires balance. We must care for ourselves to care for others. Black women and leaders of color deserve safe spaces and self care. It's not good enough to just say, we know these workplaces are toxic. It is the responsibility of those of us in power in our workspaces to continuously work to make sure that it is conducive to the health, the mental health, and the wellness of all people in public health. And then public health and advocacy really should center around mental and emotional well being. We got to be well, y'all, and we got to make sure that our community is well. So, things I want you to do: follow and connect with Dr. Vick on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Check out Triumph in the Trenches. Watch her podcasts weekly. And I want you guys to watch and share this episode on YouTube and LinkedIn. Shout out to all my people. We have different amounts of people watching, and I'm putting up clips and I'm learning all this stuff on YouTube. So, y'all help me out. Y'all get the word out about this incredible series. Next Friday, we're bringing on Fred Griffin. Fred is going to be talking about grieving post incarceration. And I'm really excited to have him in. It's a special edition, which is why we're doing it on a Friday for Black History Month. And I want to leave you with the words of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis in The Sounds of Blackness. You can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. You can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. Be courageous, be safe, sit down and be humble, and most importantly, be healed. Blessings unto you, blessings unto me. Until we meet again next time, it's been a great show.
Oh,